The Imperium of Man is a place of relentless war, an empire sprawling across the stars and clinging to survival through sheer willpower and the sacrifice of countless lives. It is a brutal existence where billions serve, suffer, and perish in the name of the Emperor. Among the countless soldiers of the Astra Militarum, there exists a grim subset, a reflection of the Imperium's cold pragmatism, the Penal Legions. The Penal Legions are the Imperium's ultimate expression of expendability, a tool forged from desperation and necessity. Comprised of criminals, traitors, and the condemned, these regiments are thrust into the galaxy's deadliest war zones, given the slimmest chance of redemption through service. Their story is one of forced valor, tragedy, and the ruthless calculus of survival in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. To understand the Penal Legions is to delve into the Imperium's unyielding logic, where every life must serve a purpose, no matter how dark or sacrificial. These men and women are not volunteers nor patriots. They are sinners and outcasts, stripped of their rights, their dignity, and often their hope. But in their punishment lies a glimmer of cruel irony. In death, they might find absolution, and in sacrifice, they might serve the Emperor's will. Yet the Penal Legions are not simply cannon fodder. They are the Imperium's secret weapon of last resort, deployed in battles so dire that even hardened regiments of the Astra Militarum falter. Their existence is shrouded in mystery and fear, their deployment marked by whispered tales of unimaginable heroism and horror. For the Penal Legionnaire, the battlefield is not only a place of warfare, but also a twisted crucible of redemption, where the line between survival and sacrifice blurs into oblivion. In this story, we will unravel the chilling history of the Penal Legions, exploring the mechanisms that created them, the men and women who fought and died within their ranks, and the impact they have left on the Imperium's bloody annals. From their inception to their darkest moments, their tale is a sobering reminder of the Imperium's stark realities. The Penal Legions are not heroes by choice, but their actions, whether driven by desperation, defiance, or duty, have left an indelible mark on the galaxy. Their legacy is one of blood, sacrifice, and the unyielding will to endure, no matter the cost. This is their story of warriors without a choice, fighting wars they cannot escape for a cause they cannot refuse. The Penal Legions as a concept are deeply rooted in the bureaucratic and militaristic machinery of the Imperium of Man, involving various key players who ensure their creation, deployment, and utilization. Each of these participants fulfills a distinct role in the grim system that sustains the existence of these expendable forces, reflecting the rigid and often ruthless hierarchies that define imperial society. At the heart of the process are the Adeptus Arbites, the enforcers of imperial law across countless worlds. These heavily armed and unyielding agents ensure compliance with the Emperor's will, arresting those who falter or rebel. Their actions often fill the ranks of the Penal Legions as they mete out punishment to criminals, dissidents, and even those who are simply accused without evidence. The Arbites are not concerned with guilt or innocence. Their focus lies on maintaining order at any cost, funneling the condemned into the war machine without hesitation. Another integral participant is the Departamento Munitorum, the logistical arm of the Astra Militarum. Tasked with organizing and sustaining the vast armies of the Imperium, the Munitorum oversees the administration of Penal Legions. They assign these regiments to battlefronts, determine their equipment allotments, and coordinate their deployments. While Penal Legionnaires often receive substandard weaponry and supplies, this is not due to malice, but rather the sheer magnitude of the Imperium's resource demands. The commanders of the Penal Legions themselves represent another key group. These individuals, often officers reassigned from other regiments or promoted from within the ranks of the Astra Militarum, are tasked with leading some of the most desperate and dangerous forces in the galaxy. Their roles require a delicate balance of discipline and ruthlessness, as they must keep their charges focused on the mission despite the inherent chaos of leading those who have little to lose. These commanders often bear the brunt of responsibility for the Legion's actions, knowing that failure is met with severe consequences. Tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus are also involved, albeit indirectly. They ensure that the penal legions are equipped with functional weapons, vehicles, and other war gear. However, the Mechanicus prioritizes other regiments over the penal legions, resulting in these units frequently using outdated or barely functioning equipment. Despite this, the Mechanicus plays a crucial role in ensuring that penal legions can fight at all, maintaining the minimum necessary standards for their operation. Another important faction is the Ecclesiarchy, which exerts significant influence over the morale and ideology of the penal legions. Priests of the Ecclesiarchy accompany many regiments, delivering fiery sermons to inspire obedience and devotion to the Emperor. For some condemned soldiers, the Ecclesiarchy offers a chance for spiritual redemption, though often this comes at the cost of their lives. These priests wield not only the Emperor's word, but also a significant degree of authority, ensuring that even the most defiant soldiers are reminded of their duty. The penal recruits themselves are, of course, a central element. Drawn from all walks of imperial life, they range from hardened criminals and political dissidents to those convicted of minor infractions or simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The diversity of their backgrounds is vast, encompassing hive gang members, debtors, deserters, and even civilians who have been accused without proof. Despite their disparate origins, these individuals share a common fate: to serve the Imperium until death or absolution. Finally, the broader Astra Militarum plays an overarching role in the penal legion's existence. While regular guard regiments view these forces with disdain, they rely on them in the most desperate situations. Penal legions are often deployed as shock troops or cannon fodder, their sacrifices creating opportunities for other regiments to succeed. The Astra Militarum's reliance on these condemned soldiers underscores the Imperium's relentless pragmatism, where no resource, no matter how flawed, is left unused in the struggle for survival. Together, these participants form the grim tapestry of the penal legions, each playing their part in a system that embodies the harsh realities of the Imperium. From enforcers and administrators to spiritual guides and condemned warriors, they contribute to the continued existence of these regiments, ensuring their readiness to fight and die in the Emperor's name. The creation of the penal legions is deeply intertwined with the Imperium's need for order, control, and the unyielding demands of perpetual warfare. Their origins can be traced to the Imperium's foundational reliance on the total mobilization of its populations, combined with a society that views human life as a resource to be spent in the service of survival. The penal legions were not born from a singular moment or event, but emerged as a grim necessity shaped by countless factors. The first and foremost cause for their formation is the Imperium's sheer scale. Governing millions of worlds across the galaxy presents immense challenges in maintaining order and loyalty. In such a vast domain, rebellion, sedition, and crime are unavoidable. The Imperium's approach to these issues has always been uncompromising: swift punishment for any perceived disobedience. However, the practicalities of mass executions or imprisonment proved inefficient in a galaxy where every able body was needed for the war effort. Thus, the concept of redeeming the condemned through service on the battlefield became a logical solution. Penal legions emerged as a means to repurpose the undesirable into tools of war, turning what would otherwise be a burden into an asset. Another critical factor in their creation was the unrelenting demand for manpower. The Imperium's wars consume lives on an unfathomable scale, and its regular regiments often struggled to replenish their ranks. The penal legions offer a renewable source of soldiers, albeit at a terrible cost. By funneling criminals, rebels, and other condemned individuals into these units, the Imperium ensured that even those who had fallen from grace could serve its purposes. This system also instilled fear among the population, as the threat of being sent to a penal legion served as a powerful deterrent against disobedience. The Imperium's rigid social hierarchy and its disdain for individual worth also contributed to the rise of these regiments. In this society, personal redemption or justice is secondary to the collective good. Those deemed unfit for civilian life or untrustworthy in other roles are given a final chance to prove their usefulness through combat. For many, this is not an opportunity but a death sentence, a reflection of the Imperium's philosophy that every life must contribute, whether willingly or not. The penal legions also serve a broader psychological and propaganda purpose. Their existence reinforces the Imperium's narrative of unyielding discipline and the cost of failure. Public executions and displays of penal legionnaires being shipped off to war zones are common reminders of the consequences of disloyalty. In this way, the penal legions are not only a tool for war, but also a mechanism for societal control. Additionally, the grim realities of certain battlefields necessitated the creation of units that could be sacrificed without hesitation. These regiments became an essential component of imperial military strategy, used to overwhelm enemy defenses, distract foes, or hold the line in battles where the odds were insurmountable. The penal legion's willingness, or lack of choice, to engage in such missions made them indispensable, especially in campaigns where no other forces could succeed without significant loss. The penal legion's establishment also reflects the Imperium's disregard for rehabilitation or reform. Once an individual is deemed a criminal, their fate is rarely reconsidered. This lack of second chances aligns with the Imperium's broader ethos of survival at any cost, where even the smallest threat to its stability is met with absolute force. By channeling the condemned into military service, the Imperium absolves itself of the need to address the underlying causes of dissent or crime, instead focusing solely on the immediate utility of these individuals. Finally, the penal legions embody the Imperium's broader philosophy of sacrifice. In a galaxy beset by alien threats, chaos incursions, and internal strife, every resource, be it material or human, is seen as expendable in the name of survival. Penal legionnaires are the epitome of this belief, their lives valued only insofar as they can contribute to the Imperium's endless wars. Their formation is a testament to the harsh realities of the galaxy and the lengths to which the Imperium will go to maintain its dominion. The penal legions are thus a product of necessity, fear, and pragmatism, an institution born from the Imperium's desperate need to maintain order and fight its endless battles. Their existence serves as a stark reminder of the Imperium's cold calculus and the sacrifices demanded in the name of survival. The history of the penal legions is marked by their involvement in some of the most harrowing and desperate campaigns in the Imperium's long and bloody record. From their inception as a solution to the Imperium's need for manpower, these regiments have been deployed across the galaxy, facing impossible odds and fulfilling roles that regular Astra Militarum units could not or would not take on. One of their primary functions was to serve as shock troops in the initial stages of planetary invasions. When an Imperial force sought to reclaim or conquer a world, the penal legions were often the first to land. Their role was not to secure victory, but to disrupt enemy defenses, sow chaos, and absorb the brunt of the opposition's counterattacks. By throwing waves of condemned soldiers at enemy strongholds, the Imperium could weaken defenses for more disciplined and better equipped regiments to follow. These assaults were almost always suicidal, with survival rates so low that even the most hopeful among the penal legionnaires understood their fate. Another key role was to garrison worlds under tenuous Imperial control. Penal legions were often stationed on recently reclaimed planets where unrest was rife, tasked with suppressing rebellions and rooting out lingering threats. Their presence served as a grim reminder to the local population of the consequences of defiance. While regular guard units might have found such missions demoralizing, the penal legions had no expectations of glory or recognition. They fought because they were commanded to, and their success, while rarely celebrated, was vital to the Imperium's efforts to maintain order on the fringes of its domain. During large-scale battles, penal legions were frequently deployed in diversionary operations. They were sent to attack enemy flanks, draw fire away from primary objectives, or hold positions until reinforcements could arrive. These missions were critical to the overall strategy of many campaigns, often determining the outcome of battles where every moment counted. Despite their expendable status, the Penal Legions demonstrated an ability to fulfill these roles with grim determination, driven by desperation or the faint hope of redemption. The Penal Legions also played a significant role in the defense of Imperial worlds under siege. When hive cities, manufactorums, or other critical locations faced invasion, these regiments were used to man defenses and hold the line against overwhelming odds. Their lack of choice and the severity of their punishment left them with no option but to fight to the death. In many cases, their sacrifice allowed more vital forces to regroup, counterattack, or evacuate civilians and key personnel. Over the centuries, the Penal Legions became synonymous with missions deemed too dangerous or hopeless for standard regiments. They were sent into environments where survival was almost impossible, such as toxic wastelands, irradiated zones, or planets infested with hostile xenos. Their willingness, or lack of alternatives, to venture into these death traps made them invaluable in situations where the Imperium could not afford to lose its more valuable troops. Even when their actions did not result in outright victory, the Penal Legions often achieved enough to buy time or create opportunities for others. Their operations were not limited to open warfare. The Imperium occasionally employed Penal Legions for covert missions, particularly when dealing with heretical cults or enemy infiltration. These missions often involved brutal close-quarters combat in labyrinthine underhives or the depths of ancient ruins. While lacking in formal training or advanced equipment, the desperation and sheer numbers of the Penal Legionnaires often compensated for their shortcomings, overwhelming enemies through brute force and relentless aggression. As their history progressed, the Penal Legions became a grim but integral part of the Imperium's military structure. Tales of their actions spread across the galaxy, both inspiring fear and begrudging respect. Their deeds, though rarely celebrated, often turned the tide in battles that would otherwise have been lost. Despite their expendable nature, the Penal Legions demonstrated a unique form of heroism, driven not by loyalty or honor, but by the raw instinct to survive and the faint hope of redemption. The Penal Legion's legacy is written in the blood of countless campaigns, from the depths of the Segmentum Obscurus to the edges of the Segmentum Ultima. Their sacrifices ensured the Imperium's survival in some of its darkest hours, and their actions, though often forgotten or overshadowed, remain a testament to the unyielding will of humanity in the face of unrelenting adversity. Among the countless battles fought by the Penal Legions, the siege of Raxus Prime stands as a grim testament to their expendable nature and the harsh realities of their deployment. The battle itself, though strategically significant to the Imperium's war effort, became a defining moment in the history of these condemned soldiers, exposing the brutal indifference with which their lives were spent. Raxus Prime was a vital industrial world located in a contested sector of the Segmentum Pacificus. It was home to manufactorums that supplied countless regiments of the Astra Militarum with weapons and ammunition. When the planet fell to a heretical uprising, the Imperium mobilized a massive military response to reclaim it. The rebellion was led by a well-equipped and fanatical cult, bolstered by rogue planetary defense forces and hidden Xenos collaborators, making the campaign far deadlier than initially anticipated. The Penal Legions were deployed en masse as part of the initial assault. Commanders viewed them as the perfect tool for this stage of the campaign, numerous, expendable, and unencumbered by the morale considerations that might affect regular troops. The goal was simple yet callous: send wave after wave of Penal Legionnaires against the heavily fortified defenses of the heretics, overwhelming their positions through sheer attrition. The commanders believed that the chaos created by this strategy would weaken the enemy sufficiently for the main force to achieve a breakthrough. From the outset, the assault on Raxus Prime became a bloodbath. Penal Legionnaires were packed into transport ships with minimal supplies and no expectation of survival. Upon landing, they were met with relentless artillery fire and entrenched enemy positions. Equipped with outdated weapons and insufficient armor, the condemned soldiers charged into no man's land, only to be cut down in horrifying numbers. Despite the carnage, the assault continued without pause, driven by the Imperium's unwavering demand for progress. One particularly infamous engagement occurred during the battle for the Northern Manufactorum district. Here, the Penal legions were ordered to storm a series of heavily fortified trenches that had repelled multiple assaults by regular guard regiments. The decision to send the condemned soldiers into this meat grinder was justified by higher command as a necessary sacrifice, but the reality on the ground was far grimmer. The trenches were defended by a combination of cultists armed with heavy weaponry and traps set by their Xenos allies, ensuring that every step forward cost dozens of lives. The assault lasted for 3 days, during which the Penal legions were pushed to their absolute limits. With no possibility of retreat and facing unrelenting firepower, the soldiers fought with the desperation born of having nothing left to lose. They advanced over the bodies of their fallen comrades, each wave succeeding only in exhausting the enemy's ammunition and resolve. By the end of the 3rd day, the trenches were finally overrun, but at a staggering cost. Over 90% of the Penal legionnaires involved in the assault were killed, their sacrifices paving the way for the Astra Militarum to secure the district. The aftermath of the siege of Raxus Prime saw the successful reclamation of the planet, but the victory came at an incalculable price. The losses among the Penal legions were staggering, with entire regiments wiped out over the course of the campaign. Their sacrifice, though instrumental in achieving the Imperium's goals, was met with little acknowledgement. In official records, the siege of Raxus Prime was celebrated as a testament to the Emperor's will and the unbreakable resolve of humanity, with only passing mention of the countless lives spent in the process. This battle marked a turning point in how the Penal legions were perceived within the Imperium. While their expendable nature was never questioned, the sheer scale of their losses during the siege led to growing discontent among lower-ranking officers and soldiers who witnessed the slaughter firsthand. For many, it was a grim reminder of the Imperium's cold pragmatism and the value it placed on human life, or the lack thereof. The siege of Raxus Prime also reinforced the role of the Penal legions as tools of last resort. Their actions during the battle demonstrated their effectiveness in breaking stalemates and achieving objectives that would have been impossible for regular forces. However, it also highlighted the moral and strategic costs of relying so heavily on such expendable regiments. For the soldiers who survived, the battle left an indelible mark, shaping their perceptions of service, sacrifice, and the price of redemption. In the annals of Imperial history, the siege of Raxus Prime remains a sobering example of the Penal legion's place in the Imperium's war machine. Their actions, though essential to the campaign's success, were defined by loss and suffering on an unimaginable scale. The battle stands as both a grim milestone in their history and a chilling reminder of the lengths to which the Imperium will go to ensure its survival. The existence of the Penal legions has left a profound and far-reaching impact on the galaxy, influencing the Imperium's military strategies, its societal structures, and even the perceptions of human life and justice across its countless worlds. These regiments, born from necessity and maintained through the harshest pragmatism, have shaped not only the outcomes of individual battles, but also the broader tapestry of the Imperium's survival. The most immediate and apparent effect of the Penal legions is their contribution to the Imperium's ability to wage war on a staggering scale. In a galaxy perpetually at war, where battles often hinge on the availability of manpower rather than advanced strategy, the Penal legions provide a steady influx of soldiers who can be deployed without regard for their survival. This relentless flow of condemned troops has allowed the Imperium to pursue military objectives that might otherwise have been deemed too costly in terms of lives or resources. By filling critical gaps in its war machine, the Penal legions have ensured that countless campaigns could proceed, securing vital worlds and resources for the Imperium's continued existence. Beyond their role on the battlefield, the Penal legions serve as a grim symbol of the Imperium's philosophy of total compliance. Their very presence reinforces the idea that no one is above the law, and that failure to serve the Emperor's will, whether through crime, rebellion, or mere misfortune, results in unrelenting punishment. This has had a profound psychological impact on the populations of imperial worlds, instilling a pervasive fear of disobedience. Entire societies have been shaped by the knowledge that even minor infractions can lead to conscription into the penal legions, creating a culture of conformity and submission that the Imperium relies upon to maintain control over its vast territories. The influence of the penal legions extends to the military doctrines of the Astra Militarum and other branches of the Imperium's armed forces. Their existence has allowed for the development of strategies that prioritize overwhelming force and attritional warfare, often at the expense of tactical finesse. Commanders who might otherwise hesitate to commit their forces to high-risk operations have been emboldened by the availability of penal legions to absorb the initial losses. This reliance on expendable troops has, over time, shaped the Imperium's approach to warfare, emphasizing brute force and sheer numbers over more nuanced or resource-intensive strategies. On a societal level, the penal legions have also influenced perceptions of justice and morality within the Imperium. Their creation and continued use have blurred the lines between punishment and servitude, with the condemned viewed less as individuals to be corrected and more as tools to be utilized. This has reinforced the Imperium's utilitarian approach to governance, where the value of a life is measured solely by its utility to the Emperor's cause. For many, this has led to a grim acceptance of their place within the Imperium's hierarchy, knowing that any misstep could result in a one-way ticket to the penal legions. The impact of the penal legions extends even to the enemies of the Imperium. Xenos and heretical forces that encounter these regiments often struggle to comprehend the sheer ruthlessness with which the Imperium deploys them. The willingness to sacrifice thousands of lives without hesitation has, in some cases, deterred enemies who might otherwise press their advantage. However, it has also fueled the hatred and resolve of certain adversaries, who see the penal legions as a grotesque manifestation of the Imperium's cruelty and hypocrisy. Within the ranks of the Astra Militarum, the penal legions have created a complex dynamic of fear and disdain. Regular soldiers, while benefiting from the sacrifices of these regiments, often view them with a mixture of pity and contempt. The knowledge that failure on the battlefield could lead to reassignment to a penal legion serves as a powerful motivator, but it also fosters resentment and unease among those who witness the brutal conditions under which the condemned serve. The ecclesiarchy has also been influenced by the penal legions, incorporating their existence into its theological narratives. Priests often frame the service of penal legionnaires as a form of penance, a way for the condemned to cleanse their sins through sacrifice. This has led to the development of rituals and doctrines that emphasize the redemptive power of suffering, further entrenching the penal legions within the Imperium's broader spiritual framework. For some, this offers a faint glimmer of hope, while for others, it serves as a bitter reminder of the Imperium's unyielding grip on their lives. Perhaps the most enduring impact of the penal legions is the precedent they set for how the Imperium views and utilizes its human resources. Their existence has normalized the idea that even the most marginalized and condemned members of society have value, if only as cannon fodder. This perspective has permeated every level of imperial governance, shaping policies and practices that prioritize survival above all else. The penal legions are not just a military tool. They are a reflection of the Imperium's soul, embodying its strengths and weaknesses in equal measure. In the end, the penal legions have left an indelible mark on the galaxy, shaping not only the course of individual battles, but also the very fabric of imperial society. Their existence serves as a stark reminder of the Imperium's willingness to sacrifice anything and anyone in its unending struggle to endure. The penal legions, while grim in concept and execution, have captured the fascination of many within the Warhammer 40k community due to their unique characteristics and the stark contrast they present to other military forces of the Imperium. Their existence raises numerous questions about the morality, strategy, and logistics of the Imperium's war machine, leading to a variety of discussions about the peculiarities that set these regiments apart. One of the most distinctive aspects of the Penal Legions is their use of explosive collars or cranial implants to ensure obedience. These devices are a chilling hallmark of their regiments, symbolizing the complete lack of autonomy granted to the condemned soldiers. The collars are rigged to detonate if a legionnaire attempts to flee, disobey orders, or fail to comply with their overseers. These mechanisms serve as a constant reminder of their expendable status and the absolute authority wielded by their commanders. This practice, though horrifying, has sparked debates about its efficacy and morality, with some questioning whether the psychological impact of such measures truly enhances performance or simply creates an environment of abject despair. Another unique feature of the Penal Legions is the diversity of their ranks. Unlike regular Astra Militarum regiments, which are typically drawn from specific worlds or cultures, the Penal Legions are a chaotic amalgamation of individuals from vastly different backgrounds. Soldiers in these regiments may come from hive worlds, feral planets, or even agri-worlds, resulting in an unusual mix of skills, behaviors, and traditions. This diversity can create significant challenges for cohesion and discipline, but also leads to unexpected moments of ingenuity and adaptability on the battlefield. Some fans of the lore speculate that this diversity allows Penal Legions to approach problems in ways that more regimented forces might overlook, though such instances are often overshadowed by the grim conditions in which they operate. The role of psychers within the Penal Legions is another topic of interest. Psychers, though rare, are occasionally found among the condemned and can pose both a significant asset and a severe risk. The Imperium's use of psychers is strictly controlled, and their inclusion in a Penal Legion is a sign of desperation or necessity. When present, these individuals are closely monitored, as the combination of their unstable psychic abilities and the inherent chaos of the Penal Legions creates a volatile situation. Fans often speculate on the terrifying potential of these psychers, who might unleash devastating powers on the battlefield, but at the cost of their own lives or the safety of their comrades. The tactics employed by the Penal Legions are another area of fascination. Unlike regular regiments, which rely on discipline and strategy, these units are often used in ways that emphasize brute force and sacrificial maneuvers. The commanders of Penal Legions are known for their creative yet ruthless approaches, utilizing the sheer numbers and expendable nature of their troops to achieve objectives that would be unthinkable for other forces. This has led to stories of audacious assaults, where Penal Legionnaires overwhelm enemy positions through sheer tenacity and desperation. Such tactics, while effective in certain scenarios, have raised questions about the long-term sustainability and moral implications of relying on these regiments for critical operations. The symbolism of the Penal Legions within the wider Imperium is another unique aspect that sparks discussion. They embody the Imperium's philosophy of redemption through service, a concept deeply ingrained in its religious and cultural fabric. However, the reality of their existence often starkly contrasts with this ideal, highlighting the harsh truths of the Imperium's survival at any cost. This duality between the promise of redemption and the brutal exploitation of the condemned adds layers of complexity to their story and fuels debates about the nature of justice and morality in the Warhammer 40k universe. Finally, the Penal Legions are known for their unsung heroes, individuals who rise above their circumstances to perform acts of incredible bravery or sacrifice. These moments, though rare, stand out in the bleak narrative of these regiments, offering a glimpse of hope and humanity amidst the darkness. Fans often discuss these figures as symbols of the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. These stories of individual courage and defiance contribute to the enduring fascination with the Penal Legions and their place within the broader lore. The Penal Legion's unique characteristics make them a compelling and often unsettling subject within the Warhammer 40k universe. Their existence raises difficult questions about the cost of survival, the nature of justice, and the limits of human endurance, ensuring that their legacy remains a topic of intense discussion and debate among fans. The Penal Legions, despite their grim purpose and reputation, have produced individuals whose actions have resonated across the Imperium, leaving behind tales of heroism, resilience, and tragic sacrifice. These figures, often overlooked or forgotten in the annals of history, stand as stark reminders of the human capacity to rise above even the direst circumstances. Their stories reflect the complexities of the Penal Legions, showcasing not only their brutality, but also the humanity that persists within their ranks. One of the most celebrated figures associated with the Penal Legions is Commander Lucan Bravel, a former officer of the Astra Militarum who was condemned after refusing to execute civilians during a planetary purge. Stripped of his rank and cast into the ranks of the Penal Legions, Bravel quickly distinguished himself through his unshakable leadership and tactical brilliance. Unlike many commanders who viewed their charges as expendable, Bravel believed in the potential of the condemned soldiers under his command. He rallied them not with threats or fear, but by instilling a sense of purpose and dignity, even in the face of certain death. His most famous act came during the siege of Helvar Primaris, where he led his regiment in a daring counterattack that saved an entire Imperial force from annihilation. Though Bravel was killed in the assault, his leadership and sacrifice earned him posthumous recognition, and his name lives on as a symbol of defiance and redemption. Another remarkable figure is Alea Drask, a former gang leader from the hive world of Karistan who was sentenced to the Penal Legions for her role in a failed uprising. Drask's background in the violent underworld of Karistan gave her a unique skill set, including exceptional close combat abilities and a natural talent for leadership. She became known as the Blade of the Legion for her ferocity on the battlefield, often leading charges armed with nothing more than a chainsword and sheer determination. Despite her criminal past, Drask demonstrated a deep loyalty to her comrades, frequently risking her life to protect others. Her story ended tragically during the battle for Orvar's Gap, where she single-handedly held off a Xenos assault to allow her regiment to regroup. Though she fell, her actions inspired a decisive victory, and her name remains a legend among the Penal Legions. Tavrin Solk, a condemned psyker, is another figure whose story has captivated those who study the Penal Legions. Originally sentenced for accidentally unleashing a psychic storm that devastated his homeworld, Solk was pressed into service despite the inherent dangers of deploying an untrained psyker. His abilities, though volatile, proved invaluable in several campaigns, where he used his powers to decimate enemy forces and shield his regiment from harm. Solk's most famous act occurred during the battle for the Turnach Spire, where he unleashed a massive psychic burst that obliterated an entire enemy battalion, saving his regiment from certain destruction. However, the effort consumed him, leaving only a scorched battlefield as a testament to his sacrifice. Solk's story is often cited as an example of the Imperium's ruthless pragmatism, but also as a reminder of the extraordinary potential that exists even among the condemned. A darker yet equally compelling figure is Valen Craig, a former commissar who was condemned for executing his commanding officer during a failed retreat. Craig's descent into the Penal Legions was marked by bitterness and a burning desire to prove his worth. Unlike Bravel or Drask, Craig's leadership was defined by ruthless discipline and an unrelenting drive to succeed at any cost. His regiment became known for their brutal efficiency and willingness to tackle the most suicidal missions. Craig's turning point came during the cleansing of Ronthar 7, where he led his forces into the heart of a chaos cult stronghold. Though the mission succeeded, Craig was mortally wounded, and his final act was to order his regiment to press the attack, ensuring victory even at the cost of his life. His legacy is one of controversy, admired by some for his effectiveness, but criticized by others for his harsh methods. Lastly, the enigmatic figure of Lisbeth Varn remains one of the most debated among fans of the lore. A former scholar accused of heresy for questioning the dogma of the ecclesiarchy, Varn was sentenced to the penal legions despite her protests of innocence. Unlike many of her peers, Varn approached her situation with an almost philosophical acceptance, using her intellect to guide and support her fellow legionnaires. She became known for her ability to inspire hope, even in the bleakest of circumstances, often reciting ancient texts and sharing wisdom that helped her comrades endure. Her mysterious disappearance during the battle for the Karath Wastes, where she was last seen leading a small group of soldiers into the enemy's rear lines, has sparked countless theories. Some believe she was killed, while others suggest she may have survived and escaped, her fate lost to history. These individuals represent the duality of the penal legions, both the brutal conditions that define their existence and the extraordinary acts of courage and defiance that emerge from their ranks. Their stories, though often tragic, continue to inspire and remind us of the resilience and strength that can arise even in the face of overwhelming darkness. The penal legions are steeped in mystery, and their very existence has given rise to numerous unresolved questions and theories that continue to intrigue scholars, tacticians, and fans of the lore. These uncertainties reflect the fragmented and often contradictory nature of the Imperium's records, as well as the deliberate secrecy surrounding the operations and administration of these grim regiments. One of the most debated questions concerns the true origins of the penal legions. While the official narrative suggests they were a pragmatic response to the Imperium's need for manpower and societal control, some theorists argue that their roots may lie deeper, possibly predating the Imperium itself. These theories suggest that similar practices might have existed during the Dark Age of Technology or the Age of Strife, where condemned individuals were similarly conscripted into military service. If true, this would imply that the penal legions are not a unique creation of the Imperium, but rather a continuation of a much older tradition. Another unresolved issue is the exact scale of the penal legions' deployment. The Imperium's vastness and the decentralized nature of its governance make it nearly impossible to ascertain how many penal legions exist at any given time. Some estimates suggest their numbers could rival or even surpass those of regular Astra Militarum regiments, particularly during times of widespread conflict or rebellion. This uncertainty has led to speculation about whether entire campaigns have been fought exclusively using penal legions, their sacrifices erased from official records to maintain morale among the wider populace. The fate of surviving penal legionnaires is another area of significant debate. While it is widely accepted that survival rates within these regiments are abysmally low, questions persist about what happens to those who manage to endure their sentences. Officially, surviving penal legionnaires are said to earn redemption and be reintegrated into Imperial society, but there is little evidence to support this claim. Some theorists posit that these individuals are instead reassigned to other dangerous roles, such as servitors or labor in hazardous environments, ensuring they never truly escape their punishment. Others suggest that survivors might be quietly executed to prevent potential unrest or insubordination, a grim prospect that underscores the Imperium's ruthlessness. The role of certain factions within the Imperium in overseeing the penal legions also remains shrouded in mystery. While the Departamento Munitorum is officially responsible for their administration, there are persistent rumors of involvement by more shadowy organizations. Some believe that elements of the Officio Assassinorum or even the Inquisition use the penal legions as a convenient source of expendable operatives for covert missions. These theories are supported by rare accounts of legionnaires being deployed in operations that seem far beyond their usual remit, such as infiltrating chaos cults or sabotaging Xenos installations. The psychological and spiritual impact of serving in the penal legions is another topic that has sparked considerable speculation. While the physical toll is well documented, the mental state of these condemned soldiers remains largely unexplored. Some theorists suggest that the constant presence of death and the knowledge of their expendability drive many legionnaires to embrace fatalism or nihilism, while others argue that some may find a twisted sense of purpose or even spiritual redemption in their service. This duality has led to discussions about the potential for penal soldiers to develop unique subcultures or belief systems shaped by their shared experiences and the extreme conditions under which they operate. One of the most chilling questions revolves around the genetic or cybernetic modifications rumored to be performed on certain penal legionnaires. There are reports of individuals exhibiting enhanced strength, resilience, or combat abilities far beyond the norm, leading to speculation about experimental augmentation programs. If true, this would raise serious ethical concerns, as these enhancements are likely performed without consent and with little regard for the well-being of the subjects. Such experiments, if they exist, would reflect the Imperium's willingness to exploit its condemned soldiers even further, treating them as little more than disposable test subjects. Finally, the broader moral implications of the Penal Legion's existence remain an enduring topic of debate. Some argue that these regiments are a necessary evil, a pragmatic solution to the Imperium's insatiable demand for manpower and its rigid system of justice. Others see them as a damning indictment of the Imperium's inability to address the root causes of dissent and crime, relying instead on brute force and fear to maintain control. This debate has no clear resolution, as it cuts to the heart of the Imperium's contradictions. A civilization that survives through sacrifice yet remains blind to the human cost of its policies. The unanswered questions surrounding the Penal Legions add to their mystique, painting a picture of a military institution that is as enigmatic as it is brutal. These unresolved mysteries continue to fuel discussions and theories, ensuring that the Penal Legions remain one of the most compelling and controversial aspects of the Warhammer 40k universe. The long-term consequences of the Penal Legion's existence are deeply interwoven with the survival of the Imperium and the broader dynamics of the galaxy. Their role, while grim and often overlooked, has left an indelible mark on the fabric of Imperial society, its military structure, and the endless war that defines the 41st millennium. Looking forward, the continued reliance on such regiments raises critical questions about their significance, potential evolution, and the possible effects of their absence. The Penal Legions have provided the Imperium with a resource that has been instrumental in countless campaigns. Their ability to absorb losses and perform tasks too dangerous for regular soldiers has allowed the Imperium to maintain its fragile grip on its territories. Without these regiments, many battles that defined the Imperium's survival would have been lost, potentially leading to the collapse of entire sectors. The absence of the Penal Legions could have forced the Imperium to make different, perhaps more calculated military decisions, emphasizing precision and strategy over sheer attrition. While this might seem like a positive alternative, the Imperium's vast bureaucracy and rigid doctrines make such a shift unlikely. In the long term, the Penal Legions reinforce the Imperium's broader culture of sacrifice and expendability. This has both stabilizing and destabilizing effects. On one hand, their existence underscores the Imperium's unyielding resolve, demonstrating its willingness to use every available resource in its struggle for survival. On the other, the reliance on such expendable forces reflects a deeper systemic failure, an inability to address the root causes of rebellion, crime, and dissent. Over time, this could erode the loyalty and morale of the wider population, as the fear of conscription into the Penal Legions continues to loom over billions of lives. The potential for change in the role and perception of the Penal Legions is another significant factor. If the Imperium were to adopt reforms that improved the conditions of these regiments or offered genuine paths to redemption, it could transform them into a more effective and moral-boosting force. Such changes, however, would require a cultural shift within the Imperium that seems almost impossible given its entrenched traditions and resistance to reform. On the other hand, should the Penal Legions become even more ruthlessly exploited, their continued use might push the Imperium into deeper moral and societal decay, alienating even the most loyal citizens. The existence of the Penal Legions also has implications for how the Imperium's enemies perceive its strength and morality. For Xenos, traitors, and other adversaries, the willingness to sacrifice entire regiments of condemned soldiers can either inspire fear or serve as propaganda against the Imperium's tyranny. This duality influences the galaxy's larger conflicts, shaping the narratives of both sides. If the Penal Legions were abolished or significantly altered, the Imperium's enemies might interpret it as a sign of weakness, potentially emboldening them in their efforts to undermine humanity's survival. From a broader galactic perspective, the Penal Legions represent an unyielding truth about the Imperium. Its survival depends on the ability to mobilize every possible resource, no matter the cost. In a universe where existential threats loom on every front, the existence of such regiments is both a symptom and a necessity of the Imperium's dire situation. However, this raises an important question about sustainability. As the galaxy continues to spiral into chaos, can the Imperium afford to maintain its reliance on the Penal Legions? Or will it be forced to find alternative solutions that balance efficiency with the preservation of its population? If the Penal Legions were to be phased out or replaced, the vacuum left by their absence would be profound. Other branches of the Imperium, such as the Astra Militarum or even the Adeptus Mechanicus, might be forced to take on more sacrificial roles, spreading their resources even thinner. Alternatively, the Imperium might increase its reliance on technological solutions, such as servitors or automated defenses, to fill the gap left by the condemned. This could lead to a shift in how wars are fought, but it would also fundamentally alter the Imperium's identity, moving it further away from the human-centered struggle that defines its existence. The legacy of the Penal Legions also raises questions about the potential for reform within the Imperium. While such changes are almost unthinkable in the current era, the extreme conditions that define the Penal Legions could serve as a catalyst for broader discussions about justice, governance, and the value of human life. These discussions, if they were ever allowed to occur, might inspire movements toward a more sustainable and humane approach to the Imperium's survival. However, such a shift would require confronting the entrenched dogma and inefficiencies that define its bureaucracy, an almost insurmountable challenge. In the end, the Penal Legions symbolize the Imperium's darkest truths and its unrelenting will to endure. Their continued existence serves as a reminder of humanity's capacity for both resilience and cruelty, shaping the galaxy in ways both profound and tragic. Whether their legacy will be one of ultimate necessity or a cautionary tale of excess and exploitation remains uncertain, but their impact on the universe is undeniable. Their story, much like the Imperium itself, is one of survival at any cost, and their place in the galaxy's future will continue to reflect the brutal realities of a civilization teetering on the edge of extinction.